Ah,
Right. So, good morning, everyone. I'm Michael Naylor, and I am the uh, director of the Maine Enneagram Center for Transformation and Change. And here this morning with Karim to hear about his type 9 journey and, the good, bad, and the ugly, and whatever else comes forward. And um, I'm a type 4 with a 5 wing, and as far as I know, there's only one other person on the planet that's a 4 with a 5 wing. So I'm not I'm not in a lot of company. Of course, that's my delusion speaking at this moment. I remember my teacher said to me, "Here's the bad news, Michael. 1 in 9 people are type 4s. There's a whole crowd of you out there. You're not so original." I said, "Well, thank you for sharing, and I've heard enough." So that said, Kareem, thank you so much for being here, and we'd just love to hear a bit about you, your loves and passions, and then your journey with Enneagram. Of course, I met you at Men's Rites of Passage in the high hills of Albuquerque, and was really moved by your leadership and your care and love of the men. Just really beautiful. And so anyway, that's why want to just hear about that man's journey too. So just jump right in where you feel called, and I'll ask questions as we go along.
fantastic. Well, before we start, can I light a candle for us?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. This will hold our time together.
Okay.
Fantastic. Well, my first journey into the Enneagram was some years ago, and I had heard about Suzanne Stabile, who lives down here in Texas and is an Enneagram teacher. And we went to see that Know Your Number symposium, I guess it was. There was maybe 30 people in the room. And she has a very fluid way of talking, that Texas drawl, and you could listen to her tell stories forever. I don't know if you've heard her speak or not. Okay. Suzanne Stabile, anyway. And so, she gets into the stories and starts talking. And I think, if I remember rightly, the Enneagram was always an oral tradition. And so she was very good at that, at bringing up stories about the numbers. And she started at 1 and started going on around. I'm going, yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, I got a little of that, Oh, I feel that. And she got around to a 9 and my stomach just dropped out. Like, okay, that's it. And I had a little bit of an idea, because she gave a little outlet, a pamphlet at the very start of it, and it had just the broad kind of things. And I read through them and I go, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm a 9. And man, my stomach I felt sick. It's like, okay.
It's usually a good sign you've landed.
It was a good sign for me.
Yeah.
So that was my journey into the Enneagram. And the Enneagram work has been so I've been involved in Illuman now since 2009. And that's when I first heard about it, probably about 2 or 3 years before that, when a friend of mine went on his Men's Rites of Passage. And then so I went on the Men's Rites of Passage at 2009. And there was talk about it amongst the men, because there's all this stuff that floats around when you get into doing some type of inner work. There's just a whole I don't know, world of stuff that's just right there, but you never hear about until you dip into it. And so that was one of the things. And it took me another few years to get to where I was at a time, and I had interest enough in it to see what these guys were talking about to go into it. And so my wife both did, and it has helped us both. even in our relationship, it has helped us both.
So what would you say are the nine-ish patterns that sort of grabbed your attention when you were learning about it?
Oh, well, it's easy. It was all around conflict. It's an easy one. Because there's all this wonderful talk about the nines and the peacemakers and all that, but woo, talk about conflict. It's a whole nother story.
Well,
and
yeah, go ahead.
And for me, uh, uh, conflict is war, and someone's going to die. That's it. You know, it doesn't matter what it is.
No gray areas, huh?
There is no gray area. There's going to be injuries involved and blood. It's going to be spurting from somewhere, and someone's going to die. That's pretty much it. So. But of course, we can't live that way. And so it was really eye-opening to me to start to come into some kind of understanding on why I was avoiding conflict all these years. Why did I just shut down, go and hide or whatever when there was some conflict involved? And as I say, it could be any kind of conflict. It wasn't just, I mean, it wasn't like over a sandwich, you know, it was like conflict, but there's different levels of conflict. Some require you to stand in the face of something and not give in, and that's very, very difficult. It takes all of my energy to do that. Nowadays, not as much, but I can certainly look back and I know that feeling, and I know it comes afterwards. I would go take a nap sometimes because I just couldn't. I couldn't do anything else.
Yeah.
I just had to go lay down and so conflict. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, a number of nines I work with say the same thing. It's like if a conflict is arising, my inner critic is saying, you will die soon. You might want to get the hell out of there, or put on your invisibility cloak so you're not a part of the encounter. And when people say, how are you doing? You say, talk to the hand, I'm fine. When inside, it's like, oh my God, I hope I survive this. And so they, when they have began to become more aware of this and then to bear with conflict or even speak their opinion, of course, that fear escalates, and then they discover over time, I didn't die. And so I wonder what has helped you navigate that particular pattern.
Yeah. So at some years ago, I was married previously, and then I was divorced, and so there's conflict in divorce. There's no way around it. And I had to be able to stand in what my needs were also, and there were kids involved, so I had 3 boys, and so there's conflict that arises, and my ex-wife and I now have a great relationship, but of course back then it wasn't a great relationship, and there was conflict, and it felt to me that I would get run over if I wasn't able to do something, and it wasn't pretty because I didn't know how to do it. What I did, if you're in a mode of avoiding conflict as much as you can all your life, and then you have to step into conflict, you just have to, it's not pretty. It's just, I just don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And it's something that is learned, and my learning was ugly, and it took it took all my energy. So between it looking ugly and it taking all of my energy, yeah, it did feel like war. I was validating everything that I thought about conflict to myself. It's like, yes.
Well, that's a very familiar story because Nines will say that sometimes when I'm faced with conflict, I just want to take a nap. I just suddenly
Yeah,
my energy just disappears, and I'm like Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz, and I'm in the poppy fields, and off I go.
absolutely.
And then
Absolutely.
the flip,
Yeah.
yeah, and then the flip side of it is if I don't do that and I stay with it, I discover I have this enormous rage that comes out like a dragon and jumps people, and they're totally caught off guard. And I'm caught off guard. I may go, "Well, who was that? I don't think that was me that just spoke." But that kind of polarity. So, how did you work with that? And again, what's helped you to stand in the face of I'm going to be destroyed here? Um,
Well, well, work, work, and more continued work, and being with other men who can help you, who can help me, who did help me,
yeah, yeah.
who did help me to know that no, you're not going to die. You're going to be okay. You need to do these things. It's uh, you have to do it. It's not, you can't avoid it. You have to do it.
Mhm.
And then I think what has helped me, I think I said it there somewhere in that last sentence, but I think that the being around other men who I call mentors. I have men that I dearly love and I call mentors, and they're teachers to me.
Mhm.
And to be able to process these things with other men, because all that time that I spoke about, through my divorce and all that, I was by myself. I didn't know a damn thing,
Mhm.
nothing. And it was only after I started, I got getting into my very first men's group, just out of desperation, really. I didn't even know what else to do. And I didn't even know what a men's group was.
Yeah.
And I started getting into that, and it's like, oh, you can say things like that. I mean, I was so naive
Mhm.
about how
Mm.
men could speak to each other.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, you can say shit like that? I didn't even know. Oops. Did I say that on? I'm sorry. You can
That's all
bleep that
right.
out and you go back.
Shit is approved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, mm,
but that was really my first small baby steps uh, into being able to see what I could do, what was possibilities for me, was
yeah.
those very first steps into the men's group, into my own help, was the very first steps there.
Yeah. Well, in my own journey, I had what is that Gino called it a God ambush. Uh,
Yeah. So
about 35 years ago, where my life was leveled, and um, I didn't have support around me, and I inadvertently had to reach out for help because I was going down. And then I met my first mentor who turned me on to Iron John and then to men's work and being with men. And he's one of the things I remember him saying is that, if you don't have men in your life to nurture you, you'll always go to the woman and you'll drown her.
mm,
How are your relationships going? Well, they're all underwater and they're dead. What can I say? But I was so shocked at what I didn't know that I didn't know. It was like, oh my God, there's this whole range of being in the world that I needed men to teach me and to model it and to show me, like, well, what's the sentence? Is there a good sentence here I can speak? Yeah, try this. And it's like, oh my God, I'm getting this education around, how to be in my own skin and how to get my needs met. I didn't even know what a need was, and how to listen to people from a heartfelt place. And so over the years, I've been involved in different kinds of men's work, and what I was really, um, so I'm a type 4, so I can get lost in the illusion of being an outsider who
Mm,
is extraordinarily sensitive and advanced, but nobody understands them, right?
mm,
And
mm,
that doesn't take you very far to the store. But,
mm,
in your mind's eyes, like, this is who I am. I'm either like awesome or I'm horrible. And then I discovered that I knew nothing, that and so that was very humbling, but it also made it possible for me to be with other human beings. And so when I saw Illuman. First, I saw the Gathering of Awaken,
mm,
and I went there, and it was like, oh my God,
mm,
these men have all been working on themselves, and they're so kind. I don't think there was a moment I felt afraid of anyone. It's like
mm,
people dropped their shields, and then the men's rite of passage was just even deeper.
mm,
And again, just as Richard Rohr would say, this this work is around dying before you die, meaning
mm.
shedding your over-identification with your false self and landing in essence. And it was just again just deepening for me. I felt like I entered an even deeper world than I'd ever been in, and that spirit just came through everything. And so I wondered for you, what your sort of process has been around men's work, and and your love of Illumin, and all of that. That would be great to hear about.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that's a great question, a long one, and I don't know. It's an unfolding and continuing story. So it's still moving on in that process, and it seems like each day something else and new comes forward. And you spoke a second ago about not knowing. You don't know what you don't know. It's like I'm perfectly happy with that now.
Yeah.
I'm perfectly happy with not knowing what I don't know, and it's
it's it's kind of the status quo, isn't it? It's like, oh, I worked all these years to discover this.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, yeah.
yeah. And so yeah, how to put that all in a story so that it's like I think that's the okay. So let me see if I can tie this back into the Enneagram in some kind of way that's not too sloppy with my 9, but and the shortest answer of it, I think, is okay, the men's work, the work that when we call it men's work, that's just what we call it. So I'll just keep using that word.
Mhm.
The men's work within Illumin and what has grown outside of Illumin with uh, uh, it it's for me it fits the it fits most the vision of the 9, I think, because let me see if I can say this and you'll go, you're full of whatever, because the work that we do and how we react with each other and how we act with each other and how we speak with each other, it's all the vision of the 9 of how the world could be.
Mhm.
And that's why I think ultimately at the deepest root of it is why I love the work so much,
Mhm.
is it fits my vision of how the world could look. And that vision is, even with the Lumen, there's conflict. I mean, it just happens everywhere. But that uh, the way that we speak to each other, sometimes, it's still ugly.
Mhm.
But the way that we speak to each other and come back around, come back around, and come back around is it's beautiful. It really is just so beautiful, and the way that we interact with each other when we're at events or even outside of events. I mean, I'm friends now with men all over the country and parts of the world,
Mhm.
and there's just a level. There's just a level that you just drop down into conversation,
Yeah.
and it goes to that place where maybe there's 4 or 5 seconds of superficial stuff and then you start talking, and then you talk about what matters.
Yeah.
Um, I think for a 9, that's like, this is a great world. This is
Yeah.
what it could look like. It's like, why are you all fighting over here? It could look like this.
Yeah.
Very easily, even it could look like that.
Yeah. Well, that matches my sort of impression of a 9 energy, which is this. I think of one of my favorite characters, Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, and how he was always creating an equal field for kids, for different gender differences, race differences. I mean, he was doing these kind of radical things in the midst of a upheaval in the country, but doing it quietly, but just blowing people's minds. And there was this sense that everyone belongs, and that there's no manifestation of a human being that's incorrect or wrong. That there's this field of belongingness and a felt sense of connection, with life, with the living force, with human beings, with nature, with whatever, it's this sense of I am interconnected with the majesty of life. And when I'm in a healthy place, I can feel it, and I can even deliver it, emit that kind of energy. So the thing I loved about Illuman was or Men's Rites of Passage, that sense of everyone's welcome was just so beautifully portrayed. What was also awesome is just how, as people relaxed into that, and the veils dropped, it's like you realize everybody's your brother. This is, and you feel that loving affection that's just naturally there when people drop their personas. And I remember one of the things that Richard Rohr said, something around the idea that there are many different masculinities. And I thought, that is so beautifully put. That is the truth. And there's nothing, all of these differences all belong. And I think that's very much in my understanding and my experience of 9ness is that belongingness and a quality of peaceful acceptance of every manifestation of human being, and which at the best, that's what 9s do. They're unifiers, and when they're feeling scared or hurt, then they can look like unifiers as they disappear through the back door and down the hallway with but anyway, I mean, even so anyway, those are some of the things that come up for me when I was at Illuman,
yeah. And so I think and to set that up, doesn't it, that's one of the very important things that we take great care of within Illumin, especially around an event like that, or around some of the other events. So you went to Awaken, and around the Men's Rites of Passage that you went to also, is that I feel like one of my primary jobs is to help build and set that container for that stuff to happen. And I take that very seriously. Because I've found over the years of doing this, and you probably have found either, is that it doesn't take a whole lot of work to get men to get to that place. They're ready. They're just looking for some place to do it. Just be able to be who they are and not worry about all the other stuff that, the pressures that are being put on us, on them to perform or whatever, none of that is important. But to be able, but it takes care, and the teams are very good at this, I think, at preparing and setting up that container. And it does take all of us to do that. And then the work that goes on inside that container, that's just gold.
Yeah, very, and I think you guys did a beautiful job of that. And like you say, once that container's there, all sorts of miracles can, arise and come through people. And expressions of unique spirit in each one, which
Yeah.
is for me was, oh, my heart was so touched. It's like, this is
Yeah.
how human beings can be. This is
There you
like,
go. Welcome to a 9.
yeah, yeah. This is real. This is the real stuff we've all been, hungering for. I would just think of my own journey, and
Yeah.
of just that kind of soul hunger for that kind of communion.
Yeah.
And then the challenge is, after coming back, is I've been bereft because I'm not in that container. It's like, oh my God, what do I do next here? That was, I got to visit the kingdom, and now I'm back on planet Earth. I remember the warning was, nothing's changed out there. Remember that,
Right.
and don't quit your job right away.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
but
Don't sell your house and move to
yeah,
Sri Lanka or
right.
Nepal or.
Right. I think, well, I do want to quit my job. I'm glad that you brought that up. We're
Yeah,
going to go
right.
somewhere. I don't know where, but
Right.
yeah, but
But that's the beauty of a weekend like that. I mean, everybody knows people have been on retreats for a long time,
yeah,
and the trick is, when returning, is then to stay in connection,
yeah,
and that is what has uh, helped me flourish over these years, is just staying in connection,
yeah, yeah.
staying in connection with other men, staying in connection with my mentors,
Mhm.
and doing my own studies, um,
Yeah.
into.
Well, so I was thinking, of the again, some of the things that one of the things we would do in the morning is sit,
Mhm.
and uh, and I think we had a conversation about, I know for myself, meditation has been
Mhm.
hugely important for me to actually have an objective experience of myself or
Mhm.
of others, but
Mhm.
that coming into quiet mind and sensing my body has been an anchor for
Mhm.
allowing myself to go through, or helping me go through, times of difficulty too. And so I just was curious about your relationship with meditation, mindfulness, if there's anything you'd like to share.
Mm. Oh yeah. So I have a meditation mentor. He's a very learned man. He's been doing it for most of his life,
Mm,
and is very, very wise in all aspects of meditation. I'll say that about him anyway.
mhm.
And oh my gosh, I got a great experience to tell you about right down this line. This is fantastic. It goes along with dream work. So I've been in dream work now. I've been in a dream group now for about 5 years,
Mm,
and I've been doing meditation for a while. And the within the dream work, I have come to a pretty good understanding about aspects of self within the dream. I've been struggling with carrying that aspects of self to the conscious self, to the waking world. I can understand it pretty okay in the dream world, not so much in the waking world.
mhm,
So at an MROP last year, um, I was I was setting up one of those morning rituals that you saw, right? And during one of those setups, the practices, uh, I had a pretty confrontational. Well, I would say it's confrontational. It was to me pretty face-to-face, direct confrontation over something that was going on. And so here we go, you know, uh, and it was one of the best direct learning moments I've had yet. And here's what happened: is that as I'm speaking to this man from my head, this part of my body is in. I'm agreeing with him. I'm going, oh yeah, okay, I understand what you're talking about. I see something here that I didn't see before. I'm saying all these right things. Well, from here on down through my gut, because my gut is where everything resides for a 9. Sheer turmoil, nuclear bomb, you know, uh, and as I'm right in the midst of this conversation, this clear voice just goes off in my head, and it said, "Who is this in you that's feeling all this right now? What aspect of yourself is feeling all this right now? What aspect of this has taken over your whole body?" And when that voice went off like that, it was this pure understanding of, for me, I finally had this experience, a bodily experience of what that self, the aspect of self would be in a waking moment. And it just, all that energy just calmed down. And I had a conversation with this guy. We ended up resolving it just beautifully, and it moved on. The weekend just moved on like any other weekend that we had. But it was that moment that, and it had to be that way. It had to be through conflict for me to be able to understand this aspect of self that I was having difficulty with. It had to be through conflict.
Yeah. Well, that's isn't that ironic that that's the doorway?
Absolutely.
And that anti-conflict piece, often the 9s will say, it's so fast. I can have all these intentions for sitting with this conflict, but the pattern just takes over, and the next thing I know, I'm walking away, and it takes a lot of mindfulness to first stay, and then to actually be able to experience that in your body. So it's not I was thinking when I first learned about Type 4 Enneagram stuff, and I read the map of my psyche, I thought, well, this is great. This should take me a couple weeks, to undo these response patterns. And then it's like, no, I'm crawling on my hands and knees through each one of these things, and it's been slow, steady work. But so it's just anyway.
So to go back to the meditation. So the meditation was tied to the dream work in that way. So the two were tied together. And so in the meditation, of course, it's all about awareness. If it's not about awareness, then you're not meditating. But so it's about staying in awareness. And so definitely those two things have tied together. My dream work and the meditation times have tied together in that part, and they're connected in that kind of way.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if you'd say a little bit about your affection and passion for water, and what you learned about that.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I worked for here in Texas for Texas Parks and Wildlife, which is the natural resource agency, and I got to work on rivers and streams across the state. We did studies and research on rivers and streams across the state. And so I was on some stream or some river my whole career, doing scientific work. And then I also loved to canoe, and I was a part of, and I'm still sort of a part of a big race that goes down here in Texas. And so I was canoe racing for many years, 20 years. I was canoe racing, and all those. And so I'll talk about the racing and the 9. Okay, so where we lived in Central Texas, there's a couple of rivers that people just love. They flock down to that, and they get in their inner tubes, and you just float down the river, and you drink beer or whatever you're going to do, and listen to music, or and sometimes there's thousands of them, but it's just the idea. People love the idea of going and sitting in a canoe, or sitting in an inner tube and floating down the river. I can't stand it. Because it is such a 9 thing to do. It's like crack for a 9 to just sit in an inner tube and float down the river. It's like, no, that is not what I want to do. So what racing has done is that canoe racing is that when you get in your canoe and you start going down river, it's about focus, and it's about there's the exercise part of it and all that. But what I love about it is that the paying attention, the continual moving downstream with the river, and being purposeful. That of course pushes me over into my 3, which is where I need to go for a 9. And so canoeing is my 3 in the river.
Yeah.
Whereas floating in an inner tube and just doing that, no, that is the 9 and going down the river. Like, no, I can't do that. And I have very little patience for it, actually.
Yeah.
When I do it.
That's a great contrast, that sort of going with the flow in the water, no focus.
Absolutely.
And then 3 is like, laser focus on what I'm working with. And so I wonder if you would say more about, 9s would say, coming into my 3 is like, resurrecting from the dead. There's like, first off, if I resurrect and you see me, you will kill me and I'll be dead. Forget conflict. Once but I wonder how you've navigated that piece of the growth pattern.
Yeah, it was sort of just an organic way. I mean, for a job, you can't just not do nothing in your job. You have to do something, and you have to be purposeful in your work. And so work for me was a way of being purposeful, and it would sometimes, the way the dynamic worked in the office is I would be in charge sometimes, or I wouldn't be in charge sometimes, just depending on what the projects were. And then and so when it was my job to be purposeful about things and be leading and stuff like that, I could do it, and I liked doing it. And so I think I lost what I was going to go with this, but let me see.
Well,
it was an organic thing. I just had to do it by the job. And then it became where, going down the river and canoeing, that all fit into it. And I started to find that was where my creativity was, my energy was going in with some intention and purpose, was moving in. And it doesn't even have to be like it's so intense and serious, where you're just not fun to be around. I still love having fun and laughing and all that stuff, but just with some direction, just with some movement. It's what has served me. And it's not, and I don't want to make it sound like I have to do something every time. Well, no, that's wrong. My wife would say you do have to do something every time you go somewhere. So I better not do that one. Because when we go camping, she wants to just sit and relax. I'm like, let's go for a 10-mile hike, whatever. So maybe I'll take that part back. But I have found that that's what is a good driver for me to keep me focused. And I'll tell you, wow, I may be oversensitive in this direction, actually. And what I mean by that is I don't have much patience for myself when I just don't do anything. And sadly to say, I even have less patience for other 9s when I'm around them. Seriously, when I'm around other 9s, like not so much nowadays, but I have had friends who they were 9s. They didn't know they were 9. I mean, they didn't do Enneagram work or anything like that. And what's funny is back then I didn't do any Enneagram work either, but I could sense it. I just knew it. And they would tell me, they're stuck here and they feel like life is going by and everything. It's like, oh man, I had so little patience for that. So little patience because I just like looking in a mirror.
Absolutely. I can think of many times where a struggling type 4 is doing their thing, and I'm going, oh, I can barely be here,
Yeah.
because it is a mirror, and it's like I think to myself, well, maybe I should have some mercy here because I was lucky to get out of that trap. But it's like it has such an aversion in me, that I'm just like, getting the hell out of there. And so it's a curious thing that certainly I have to work on. But I was thinking of, another aspect of the 9 going to 3. I remember there was a guy, um, at one of the trainings, who was speaking. He was a type 3 identity, and he said, I so love the fact that all of your eyes are on me. I'm a type 3, right?
Mhm.
And 9s often have that story of like, I don't want to be sitting in that limelight, and I don't want to be like those damn 3s who, love that. So I just wondered what that limelight story is like for you.
Well, I could ask you your experience of watching me because you saw me
Yeah,
up there in the
yeah,
front and
yeah.
doing my thing. No, I don't love it. I don't know that I even like it, but I know that it is something that needs to be done,
Yeah.
um, and I can make myself uh, do it, and I love doing it. I love being up there. I mean,
Mhm.
well, let me say, I don't love being up there for that reason,
Mhm.
the limelight reason,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
but I love having the having given the opportunity to do it,
yeah.
and
Mhm.
and I'm very grateful and thankful for the opportunity to do it, and that I think, and I hope that I do it well. I think I do, but I hope I do it well.
Yeah, you do.
Um, and I can carry that energy from when I step in on day one all the way to step to the end of the thing. But when it's done, it's like I need a break. I'm done. I can't do that. I can't stay that way. I have to go away and be by myself because I need to regenerate. And
Yeah.
the way I do that is just be by myself.
Absolutely. I'm the same way as a type 4. 4s and 9s are considered to be
Yeah,
the withdrawn type. And if
right.
they're around people for long periods of time, I know from myself at the end, I kind of,
Yeah.
after the last day, I kind of collapse and go into my own little zone for a couple of days. So,
Yeah.
to regenerate.
So I see myself on a weekend like what you experienced at MROP, even at Awaken, because I did some of that too.
Mhm.
Is that I just see myself more of a guide. I don't know that I would even call myself a leader
Yeah.
in some respect, but just as a guide.
Yes.
And I can I can do a guide.
Yeah.
Like I said, I wouldn't say I'm a leader, but I could do a guide. And
Yeah.
just to be there. And what guides are very good at, if you've been out in wilderness settings with guides, is they they just help you do your own thing. I'm not doing anything for anybody. I'm just helping.
Mhm.
Just do your own thing, and that's what guides do.
Yeah.
I've never talked about that before that way, but I think that's what comes to me right now. And you can see what your experience was when you tell me.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, it's in some ways it's very nine-ish. I think of like Fred Rogers, and here he is in the national limelight every day, but it's like he's not even there. The focus is not, and he has this way of helping, but keeping his hands off of things. There's like he creates a space for kids to come forward, and he says some, powerful, encouraging words, but there's a way that his hands aren't on it, and he's facilitating this environment, and which to me is very, very nine-ish. And I think that's one of the things that you did well, and the whole container you built was around creating that, in a sense, sort of independence for each person.
Mhm,
Everybody's a little bit
mhm,
different. One
mhm,
size doesn't fit all. There's room for you in
mhm.
this, and I thought that was just so well done, and certainly as you're calls men forward to speak their truths, because there's no standard of maleness that we're trying to. So yeah, that very, very nine-ish quality. And I appreciate the distinction between, threes, can get, this isn't a bad thing, they just get lit up with, and then they're generous and loving and lit up, and they can do it for long periods of time. Whereas, others of us can enjoy contributing and being in this beautiful movement, and then afterwards, need to go sleep for a couple of days. But
Yeah.
so when there's one term that sometimes gets used for nines that's misunderstood, which is the emotional habit of the nine is sometimes described as sloth.
Yeah.
And sloth isn't laziness. It's engaging in something that I'm not present for, and that once I start doing it, I keep doing it, and there's like an automatic pilot I go into, as opposed to being in contact with my passion around what I'm doing and being present. Sometimes nines unwittingly hide out because they can just start doing what everybody expects, and they don't cause any ripples, but they work really hard, and they get stuff done, but it's almost like they're not there. So I wonder what your relationship with that idea of sloth is.
Yeah. Well, I think that may contribute to some of that sensitivity I was talking about a little while ago, about my own oversensitivity about what you call slothfulness now, or however you say that word, or being lazy, which I've been called before, being lazy. And there's, I recall many times over the years where somebody would go, "Oh, you're in the room. We didn't even know you were here. You were here." I have all those memories. I have those memories of that, and it took a while to be able to discern that that I can choose. I can choose to have an action that has some intention behind it, and it took a while to be okay with that, because most people don't want that. They just either just do something for doing, or they just want you to do it for their purposes and just drag you along. And if you don't want to do it, then, or if you want to think about it or whatever, it's like, oh, he's lazy.
Yeah.
But to stand in the intention of the action, I think that's what Richard uses that in the center. It's called action and contemplation. And I've been reading. I know I'm late to it, but I've been reading the Gita here recently, and I'm still into it right now. And there's a whole chapter on action and contemplation. It's like, yeah, perfect,
Yeah.
And a deepening sense and study into awareness, which has been helping me too in my own meditative practice. But that part there is to be able to be okay with, no, I'm going to think about this a little bit, and then I'll do it if I want to do it. If I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, not just going along with the expectations, going along to get along, sort of thing. So yes. It reminds me of, so I've done a lot of men's groups with addiction recovery, and there was one group that really stood out. There was this young guy. There was about 10 men in the group, and I realized after 2 weeks that I passed over him every time, and he hadn't spoken. And I said, how do you do that? You're like blend right into the couch. And he said, well, I learned in grade school how to disappear at my desk, so I never got called on. Says I just it's like this kind of Jedi power I have. And I said, well, that's powerful, because I just like almost gloss over when I go past you. So kind of, that whole thing of, are you in the room? Certainly he had developed the ability to not be for his own survival.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to tell you a story, and I hope you laugh, because it's funny now. It wasn't funny back then. Yeah, it's funny now. I was either a sophomore. I had to be a sophomore in high school. We moved to this little town out west of Houston, Katy, Texas, which was a dot then. Now it's like a huge part of Houston. But it was a 2A school, rice farmers, rice farming community. You know, to see kids come into school in boots and cowboy hats every day was not a big deal. I mean, everybody did it, right?
Wow.
And here I am, you know, Karim Aziz, real cowboy. But for 1 year, I did a total makeover. I did a total makeover. I wore boots, jeans, the belt, the black hat. My God, I wanted to blend in so bad, and I just laugh at that now. But good gosh, what it took, I can't even think now back then what it was like back then. What it took for me to make such a complete turnover like that. To want to blend in 100%, to be a part of the camouflage. Oh boy.
Oh, that's a great
Luckily,
story.
it only lasted a year. It just fell apart because it wasn't going to work. But
That's a great story.
talk about trying to blend in. He's like,
Yeah,
oh gosh.
that's right. I know what I need to do, so I'll become a cowboy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. It was a pretty nice black cowboy hat though. And
yeah.
I still wear a cowboy hat every now and then, but I use it for sun reasons
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
not to blend in with the other boys.
Well, anything else that you'd like to say about your 9 journey that you haven't touched upon? Or like, I was just wondering, what were you like, in high school,
Yeah, well,
where you gotta like, find your place there. I mean, what was that like for you?
yeah, you heard a part of that right now. No, I think I'll talk about my recent struggles
Okay.
in knowing more about the 9, and so I'm a 9 with a strong 1 wing. Very, very, I can be very detail oriented.
Hmm.
And you saw some of it during on these weekends. I'm very, very detailed. Pay attention to the smallest details. Pay
Hmm.
attention to the
Hmm.
everything that's going on, where things are placed, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And my job, I was a map maker, so I paid attention to lines and line widths and fonts and texts and
Wow.
all the stuff. Just I could pay attention to all of that stuff. And then over here is my little 8 wing. There we go. That's my little 8 wing. Here's my 1 wing, and here's my little 8 wing over here. So I have known for years, and how, and this is my work, I think, is how to foster and grow an 8 wing with bringing my 9 with it.
Mhm.
That's my work, and I think that's what. And I told Richard this last time I saw him.
Hmm.
I told him this very thing, and he said, it seems perfectly obvious now, but he said, well, you just have to find something that you're passionate about and stand in it.
Yeah. 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 Beautiful.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and then bring all your 9 with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think what I've noticed with 9s with 8 wing is that sometimes they'll have this kind of eruption of fierce anger about something, which is their 8 wing saying there's something you really care about. But if I contain it for too long, when it comes out, it's like, I've got a bazooka, as
Right.
opposed to just this firm standing in with what I care about. And it's the 8 energy is so much different than the 9. It's but all gut centered, relying on sensing my body and my gut.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, you
And
mentioned, go ahead.
that's one thing that I have learned over the years is to trust my gut. Used to, whenever I had something going on in my gut around stress and all that stuff, I would go to the doctor. I'd go get the little purple pill or whatever it was and try
Yeah.
to deal with it that way. I mean, I've even had blood tests for ulcers, things like that. And it took a while. It took a while in this work. It took a while to just start to going, oh, no, I need to listen to that. I need to trust that. It's my intuition speaking.
yeah,
It's telling me something.
yeah,
And so whenever this arises in me now, whenever something in my gut arises, like, okay, something's going on. What is it? I don't know
yeah,
what it is
yeah,
because it's on another, it's
yeah,
operating on a different level than what's going on up here.
yeah,
But what's going on? And
yeah. Beautiful.
just to turn and trust into what it's trying to tell me.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, beautiful. Well, one of the things that I really was moved by in both of the retreats I went to was the attunement to nature. And
mhm,
I think at one
mhm,
point Richard said something like, you need to learn. Well, first he said, if you notice, for those of you who read the Bible,
mhm,
that all of the great miracles never happened in a church, they
mhm,
happened in nature.
mhm,
And then he segued to something along the lines of, you need to be able to read nature the way you would a book.
mhm,
And so there's, all of the contact with nature and being out in nature was, I
right.
felt like it really pulled in some intense energy to that circle. But then, when we were talking, you mentioned something about what you had discovered about, water actually
Mhm,
being a living being, not just this
mhm.
sort of, a massive material, but that there's an intelligence. And I wondered if you would say a bit about that, because I think that's very powerful.
Yeah. Um, well, as I said, I spent a lot of years on rivers and streams, and now I live on the Texas coast. So I'm interacting now more with the bay, where these rivers and streams empty into, than I am with rivers and streams themselves.
Mhm.
But I came to a point, and I don't think it's very hard for anybody to come to a place where you go, oh, yes, rivers provide life. They are life giving. It's not very hard to get to that
Yeah,
place.
yeah.
And then, so one day I was out on a river and I had an experience with
Mm,
the river in the moment. And it just
mm,
like, it came alive in my mind that this river is just doesn't give life, but it's alive.
yeah.
And, and so it really was a beautiful experience
Mm,
to have there on the edge of that Rio. It was in the Rio Grande River up in New Mexico.
mm,
And what it looked like was when we breathe, we have steam that comes out of our mouths in the cold morning. And when I was walking down by the river, the steam was just rising off of the river, like you've seen probably many times. And I just thought, dang, this river's breathing. It's breathing.
mm. Yeah, yeah,
It's what it looks like. It looks like it's breathing. And I just thought,
mm,
this river is alive.
yeah.
And so it really has changed
Mm,
how I now interact with rivers and streams, and now the bay itself. So
yeah.
when I go into and I ask and I invite men or anybody, not just men, that when they go to a river to introduce themselves to the river.
Mhm,
Just talk to the river, tell it a story, and just
mhm,
sit and listen.
mm, mm,
Let's sit and listen
mm,
and see what the river has to tell you, because the river has lots to tell. And some of these rivers here in Texas are 20 million years old. I don't know, they're old,
mm.
uh, and and a and a river that has been probably constantly flowing for
Mm,
that long, or I'm sure it's dried out over time, but it comes back. It comes
yeah,
back. It flows. It flows. It flows.
yeah.
And just the wisdom that might come from something like that, a being like that. And what question would you ask a being like that? If you could sit at the edge, what
Mm,
question would you have? What would you ask
mm,
something that had that kind of an age behind it,
mm,
that kind of a long, long period of wisdom behind it?
yeah,
Um,
beautiful.
and just listen for the answer.
Well, that's what I really appreciated about both the trainings is bringing in the elements and the
Mhm,
directions and just it's like the element of air, water, fire, earth
Right.
as a
Right.
living transmitter
Okay.
of presence was
Yeah.
really powerful and
Yeah.
really touched me. So that's definitely a growth edge for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the rivers, what I talked about canoeing, why I love canoeing so much on the rivers, it gives me focus and whatnot to move downriver. But it also, what it does is that the river, the river, if you look, and all river guides know this, it tells you where to go. It
Mm,
shows you where to go. You can
mm,
hear, it even
mm.
gives you cues. It wants to help you get downriver.
Yeah. Oh
You
my
just have to
God.
watch, you have to pay attention
Mm,
on where it's trying to guide you to go.
mm,
And so you have to be in tune with what's going on the water when you're canoeing like that. Is to watch for those clues, to watch and listen for what's going on. You can see the birds will even give you a cue. You know,
mhm,
there's cues, there's all signs, all kinds of signs that are
mm.
out on the water, and that has uh, really developed a deeper relationship with me in streams and rivers over time. And now in the bay, and
Yeah.
in the bays, what I love so much about the bays is that there's such an abundance of life when you go out and you canoe or you paddle into these backwater bays, which are the estuaries and nurseries for a lot of the fish species, where the rivers come into the saltwater mixture, that mixing ground.
Mm,
And you just paddle out there, it's just abundant with life.
mm.
It's beautiful to see.
Well, is is there any particular training you're aware of that can sort of drop somebody into this experience? Outdoor training that that comes to mind for you. So if someone's listening and they're curious, they would uh, have a place to go with that curiosity. Or if nothing comes to mind, maybe you could text me later if you think of it. But-
Well, off the top of my head, I mean, I know that Illuman offers wilderness retreats.
oh, okay.
Uh, so a friend of mine, he and his wife put on there's stuff all out there this is that world that I talked to. You just dip into it. It's like, oh, all this stuff exists I never even
Yeah,
heard of or knew about. It's like,
yeah,
oh, there's a whole world of it.
yeah.
But my friends Terry and Vanna, they put on a vision quest each year in Colorado, um,
Oh, okay.
which is a wonderful thing. And then there's multiple men within Illumin that have wilderness offerings into the desert or something like that. And of course,
Okay.
there's Plotkin's work that he does with his organization, and there's all kinds of stuff. You just got
Yeah.
to like
Yeah.
your
Okay.
just dip a little bit down and go a little bit, just a little bit further. And go, oh, here it is. Here's that layer. It's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it's
Yeah.
everywhere.
Awesome.
It's you just don't have to try very hard, but it does take, especially if you're not used to doing it, it does take a little bit of courage to step into it,
Mm.
because it can seem scary. I mean, oh, I'm going to go spend 5 days out in the desert? No way. Yes, once you do it, you'll
Mhm.
go, why didn't I do this?
Yeah.
You know, why didn't I go on this men's rites of passage 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Think something like that.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
always a fuller, to me, there's always a fuller reward that comes and emanates and usually growing relationships.
Well, thank you for that. I just had one last thing I want to mention, which I don't think I mentioned, is this idea that Richard talked about, that if something is true, let's say in Buddhism,
Mm-hmm.
it'll be true in Christianity,
Mm-hmm.
Sufism,
Mm-hmm.
Muslim practice, etc. That kind of sense of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, universal truths are found in all across the board, that there's no
Right.
separation. There might be different languaging of it, which I thought was what I loved about that was the inclusiveness.
Mm-hmm.
That because if you haven't done enough research on Richard's stuff, it can look like all Catholicism transformed into a new framework for understanding more. I would say more deeply what some of the primary messages are, but I really appreciated that kind of global
Yeah.
wisdom. And I wondered, what if you had anything you'd want to say about that.
Well, I guess what I would say is just keep following the truth of it.
Yeah, yeah,
Whatever that truth is that you find a string of that connects all those together, follow that.
yeah.
That will be good. That will be a good place to go through. And um, from a nine's perspective, if you follow that truth that has these interlinkings to whatever other religions or philosophies or whatever, then that makes you more appreciative of what that may offer and what that may offer and what that may offer, the truths and that all come back to this string of truth that goes through.
Yeah.
I think that's what I would say, to follow that. It won't do you won't do wrong by doing that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Just
Did I
Karim,
pass the 9 test today? I don't even
yeah,
know.
you get an A plus for sure. It was awesome to be with you. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
sharing your wisdom and experience. And
Oh, well, I enjoyed being with you too. It's good to see you again.
yeah, you too. I hope I have contact with you down the road in another mind-blowing setting, of course.
Yeah, thanks.
But yeah, thank you so much. I'm gonna turn this recording off and
Okay.
just let's see, where is my button? Um, I'm looking around. Oh, here we go over here.